Was born in Israel in 1938. That was before the establishment. At that time, Israel was called Palestine. They were living there, Jews and Arabs. Jews were a lot in the city more, and Arabs, there were some cities of Arab, but the big cities were Jews, and the Arabs more in the villages. And the British were ruling. Before, I remember when the British mandate was ruling, I remember that we had curfew and there were the British soldiers in the streets. They behaved good, but they were terrorists, and the Israeli terrorists who wanted to expel the British. So, and they bombarded some buildings, and they killed some British officers. So there were a lot of times curfew, and you couldn't move from place to place, and you couldn't go anywhere, and of course they checked you. It was hard, and my mother, once I was in first grade, they bombed the class, and bombed the building near my school that was in the center of town. And I remember the teacher telling us, go under the desk, and our ceiling was crumbling, and what would it help? We didn't have where to hide. And my mother was so lucky. She went to some big, one day, that was before 47, I think it was in 47, she went to meet a friend in a big office building, and 5 minutes or less after she left the office building, big office complex, a bomb destroyed half of it, but that was by Jewish terrorists. And I remember I have a brother that is 5 years older than me, and my mother worried very much that he joined the terrorists. He was Jewish terrorist because my father very much supported Jewish terrorists, and I have a hunch that he had a store, because I remember mysteriously that he had some guns and ammunition that he hid from the English in the store. So for us children, it was also very exciting time, scary and exciting, because I remember me and my friend decided that a woman across the road from us, we lived in a small apartment, she's a spy, and we would spy on her and write for days everything. She left the house, she came to the house, and then we called the police to tell them that there is a spy, and we were 7, 8, 9. And I remember also when there was a curfew, jumping from yard to yard that they will not catch me, but they were not bad, the British, I must say, but only towards the terrorists they were very bad. So in 48, the moment the British left the country, the Arab came and they tried to conquer us, and there were many people died. It was because they were not prepared, Jewish people, soldiers, I mean, because they were refugees. They didn't know. They came from the boat, and they were taken and there was no ammunition and no this. And especially Jerusalem was surrounded. I remember several bombing and shelling, and once I think my dog saved. We would go down we lived on second floor, and we didn't have a basement or things like this. So we would go to our neighbor's first floor to an internal room that doesn't have walls outside, and all the building would come and hide there. And I remember also going in the street and they shooting on us. Was scary times, but it was also an adventure. In Jerusalem, we didn't have almost what to eat for a few months. We collected grape leaves, and my mother would make from them and we would eat weeds. And we didn't have gasoline to heat the pots. We would do from newspaper, bury them in newspaper. But people were volunteering to do a lot of things. My mother would go from house to house, and I would go with her instructing people how to keep a pot hot, buried in newspaper and so on. And my father went to guard some border inside, but he didn't know to shoot and never had he was 50. He had some club and he stood there. And people were volunteering for different things, as I said. And as I said, it was some adventure. Like, we didn't have oil to cook, so we made fire outside in the yard and she baked the bread we didn't have. That was for a few months. And water, we would take one bus a week, the whole family. You skim the water and the other would go in. You skim the water and the other would go in. Because we didn't have water. Anyhow, thank God, I think too many people died, the best, because everybody believed in, and we were drummed also that there is no choice. We have to survive. We have to make a Jewish state. The Jews all over the world will want us, and the Arabs never wanted us, never. They always were pogroms and so on. I remember being very scared, but it was also adventure, I must say. In 48, we were educated. When you grow up, it's good that you will go to live in a kibbutz, because the leadership came from there, but it wasn't the majority of the Jews. It was a minority, a small minority, but elite, you know. So for a while, when I was 13 or 14, I also wanted to go to a kibbutz, to live in a collective. Everything is equal, everything is shared, everything is wonderful. And the army, after the establishment of Israel, they established an army, and it was obligatory to serve in the army 2 years. But the army established special units for those who wanted to go and establish a kibbutz. There were special units, you know, to serve there, and then to go to a kibbutz. Saba was in such a unit, because many of us belong to youth movements. That's where we got a lot of our brainwashing and our idealism. You joined the youth movement when you were 11, something like that. And twice a week, we would go to, in my case, we didn't have even a cabin. We just went to school and we used one of the classes, and the school supported us. Supported meaning gave us places to meet. That's all. And our leaders were young people. And when I was 14, I became a leader for 11-year-old. We called them scouts. But there were several youth movements, not only scouts. And we would talk with the children, dance with the children, go camping with children, but also a lot of values. How do you help the country? How do you justice? A lot of. Anyhow, I served 2 years in the army, most of the time training younger people in army exercise, and again, like a youth movement, talking with them and so on. But part of the time I lived in camps and in tent, and I learned to throw a grenade and to shoot, but I didn't have any shooting. Women didn't have at my time. Now there are much more fighters. I was responsible for movies and for singing and so on. And afterwards I taught more. Anyhow, so everybody served in the army. All the wars that Israel had were instigated by Arabs. They started the war. Anyhow, but everything you did was to build the country, because we have no choice. Nobody will help us if not us, and we have enemies all around us. And many people were great people, sacrificed a lot to come here, especially before the War of Independence. People left good homes with money and went starving and no electricity and no this from idealism, and it was a very educated country at the time. So in 62 I got married, and Saba had an opportunity to go to the United States, and my parents didn't say anything, and we went, and it was good. We went for 2 years because of visa complaints. But Saba got a taste of America. He told me, I love this big horizon. Israel is so small, like New Jersey. When we came back to Israel, end of 64, he got this appetite to go to America. And when I told my father that we probably will stay, it was hard for me also. It took me about 10 years to accept, because it was a shame in Israel to immigrate. In Israel, they call it, those who come to Israel, they're going higher, and those who leave Israel are called down, as if, because it was very looked down. Our friends, I thought we will lose friends because we left. And my father was furious. He was very Zionistic, very, believe in Israel, and all his life he was active in Hebrew, in politics, in this, very much so. So he told me, and by that time I had 2 children, and he told me, listen, I will disinherit you and the children. I cannot tolerate that you leave the country. Because a lot of the leaders and the people believe that you need to build the country. You are surrounded by armies and millions of Arabs, and we need everyone to make the country strong. So that's my story, my dear.